beginning at Pentecost, and that's how I want to define contemporary. Contemporary beginning at Pentecost to the present day. Now I realize that that's a broad range, but for our purposes of study, it'll do. So we ask the question again: was the devil's assumption on target? Was it on target with Job? Would you say his assumption was that Job would curse God? Was he? No. So we ask again, but in the contemporary setting, is the devil's assumption on target concerning the church? Concerning the church. Now, let's look into the scriptures. And keep in mind that we looked last time at 2 Timothy 4, a low view of God, where we see that the time will come when they will not endure sound doctrine, but will turn away their ears from the hearing of the truth, and shall heap unto themselves teachers having itching ears. We want to look at some ear ticklers in the scripture this morning, but also in Romans chapter 1, where you're part now. The low view of God, cultural leavening of the church, where we see a shift from sacred to secular, counterculture, a downward spiral beginning at roughly the 24th verse. In Romans chapter 1, beginning at about verse 24. We see also that in this 24th verse, a very startling statement giving insight into the disposition of God, who is said to be long-suffering. It is said in verse 24, God also gave them up to uncleanness through the lusts of their own hearts, to dishonor their own bodies between themselves. Now I understand that this points backward, takes us out of the contemporary time setting, and takes us back to ancient times. But the fact of the matter was that in first century, when Paul wrote this epistle to the Romans, that the same kind of debauchery that was true of the ancient people was true of the people in Rome at the time. And if you take seriously and literally the epistle to the Corinthians, 1 Corinthians, you will notice that even in the church, there was that same kind of debauchery that was prevalent among the early Christians. Now the reason, of course, I think, is that unlike you and I, they did not have in every household their hands on the scripture. They were not as sophisticated in the range of their knowledge of what God had required of them. Though everyone is accountable for any amount of light that they have, the more light you have, the more accountable you are. And so over and over again, you find in the book of 1 Corinthians, Paul addressing one problem after another that all really was a description of a low view of God in the Corinthian church.